Hello and welcome to Talk the Walk. I'm Azam Khan. Hong Kong has already kicked off plans for future tech hub development, including its innoparks, with tech and data-driven upgrade of local industries, among other similar ventures with billions earmarked, all with the hopes of tapping into synergy with cities and ports across the mainland border. The government hopes that this, in turn, will help draw more foreign talent and companies to the city in the coming years, as the city continues to position itself for the long term. How much potential do these plans have in reshaping Hong Kong's economic capabilities in the near future? And how can the city balance chartering a course for the future, as well as due diligence on fiscally rebounding from COVID? Joining me to unpack the topic today is Johannes, President of the German Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. Zach, thank you so much for taking the time.
Awesome. Thank you. Good to be here.
So when you consider the innovation parks and the different tech hubs that are being developed right now, how important do you think these are in the Hong Kong's significance in the Greater Bay Area and also in restoring confidence as a financial hub city to the world?
Okay. Well, I think what's really important for us to keep in mind always is Hong Kong's role as a connector city. I mean, that is clearly the key thing about Hong Kong, that it connects mainland China to the rest of the world. So also when we're talking about technology, what we're talking about is not just mainland Chinese technology or Hong Kong technology, we're talking about reconnection. And the innoparks are a perfect way of doing that. I mean, obviously Hong Kong is not going to be a manufacturing center. It doesn't have the scale. That's over across the border in mainland China. Right. But what it does have is cutting-edge research. And what it can do with the innoparks is actually make sure that that research goes into production, that it actually leads to something coming out of the research. And I was lucky enough last week, we went to Innopark to something called the Advanced Manufacturing Center. Had a good talk with Dr. Yu, head of reindustrialization, and he showed us what they're doing there. And this is an open space where what they're trying to do is make sure that students, academics who are extremely good at abstract thinking actually make sure that what they want to create can be created. So you've got this idea in your head and this is how it's going to work. But that doesn't actually mean that it can be manufactured and can come out of a box one after the other from an assembly line. And so that's, I think, where Hong Kong has got an extremely important role to play to make sure that that type of from research into prototyping takes place and that is integrated with Western research, with research from across the globe, from ASEAN, from Europe, from America, because there's
with foreign expertise, basically.
With foreign expertise and with lots of people putting their heads together rather than only focusing entirely on mainland China.
So like you said in the past, Hong Kong being the gateway to China, but now it's in a more higher service, higher developed way to make the manufacturing more important. And you mentioned the education and research as well. And to my understanding, Germany and Hong Kong have always had that collaboration of research, high-end research, tertiary research. Can you just expand on that and how that's going forward for Hong Kong with its tertiary education?
I think it's important at the moment that we also re-establish part of what has admittedly been lost through the pandemic and through the past 3 years. So we have had academics leaving. We've had many of them staying, but I think what will be important is that we make sure that going forward the basis of what is there, that is retained and that we again manage to attract talent. I mean, that's one of these key words that we keep talking about, attract talent. Yeah. But when we talk about attracting talent, often we're thinking about sort of young people who come to work here. We also need to attract talent from academia. So we need to make sure that European, Asian, other countries and nations, professors, research fellows, that they come and stay again in Hong Kong to make sure that there's the broadest base for basic research and first stage research going then on into the manufacturing
collaboration. Yeah, okay. And now with the restrictions and the pandemic restrictions in the review mirror, how do you see the opening up and what role does the German Chamber of Commerce as well have in the pipelines for being part of that role of helping to facilitate?
Well, the biggest thing, obviously, about opening up is that we are actually traveling again. So, quite honestly, right at the moment, we're having a very hard time in the German chamber. I think, honestly, in all chambers, because everyone you want to talk to is on the road. They're all in mainland China or in Thailand or in Malaysia or in wherever.
That honeymoon phase.
There's a honeymoon phase of I haven't seen my suppliers for 3 years. I haven't seen anybody for 3 years. So basically, each time I call anybody, I'm hearing, yeah, well, I'm in an airport lounge, and can you call me back again? So I think that'll last for about another couple of months, and then things will again become slightly more normal. They go back to that level of activity that we've had previously. For us, what's vital is not so much the people who are here in Hong Kong already. I mean, they're the ones who are keen anyway, and they're the ones who've stayed throughout the pandemic. They're the ones who've always known what the value of the city is. For the chamber, what is important is that we engage with Germany, that we engage with people in Germany, because in Germany there's been, one has to say, a certain, the perception of Hong Kong, the perception of China, particularly since the Shanghai lockdowns, has taken a bit of a beating. So I think.
So you think that'll flatten out, and as things open up and time goes by, and then.
Well, it'll flatten out, but I think it'll take active engagement because we are at a point where we need to go out and say, okay, look, come visit, let us visit you. Let's talk about what is there. Let's talk about what you may be missing. We do need to actively re-engage, and I think that's also something that the Hong Kong government has understood. Yeah. There was this perception in the past that Hong Kong may have had slightly this attitude of, well, we're Hong Kong and we're great, which is true, but people will come. And that may no longer be entirely the case.
Now there needs to be a more rebranding and understanding its new focuses and repivoting sort of thing.
Exactly. And there needs to be outreach. There needs to be active engagement. You need to actively go out and you need to say, okay, look, these are the advantages we have. This is what we can do for you.
Well, would you see now, on that point, when you see now the Hello Hong Kong campaign, and then Chief Executive John League traveling around the Gulf area and reestablishing economic ties with them as well, and new investments to bring it to the Greater Bay Area. But more specifically with the Hello Hong Kong campaign, what are your thoughts on that? And is the Chamber of Commerce also playing a role in that?
Well, we're not playing a role in the Hello Hong Kong campaign. There was, the chambers obviously are. You're aware that there's a promotional video from the chambers. The German chamber wasn't part of that, probably because I'm not exactly the guy you want to have for that.
Right.
Perhaps would have been happy to take part in that. I think Hello Hong Kong is an extremely good idea, but it's a kickoff. Yeah, the 500,000 tickets, obviously they're a good way to start. But this is going to be a long haul thing. So it's not just that one campaign and then we all go, and happily we've done that.
Well, it sort of matches with the honeymoon stage that you were talking about. So it's good to have this out while the honeymoon stage, and then it can get down to the nitty gritty when that flattens out. And obviously the finance chief recently came out with a budget speech as well. So I just wanted to get your general thoughts on that, and if you think that's aligned with Hong Kong's priorities as it tries to rebound.
Well, I think what the financial secretary has done, first of all, which is important, he's made sure that the people of Hong Kong can get through the effects of the recession and the after effects of COVID fairly well. I mean, that is obviously vital to the Hong Kong government, that the own population feels that its interests are being looked after. So I think in that sense, consumption vouchers, generally I wouldn't be a big fan of that. I think in the specific circumstances, I think it's a good idea. I think a lot of the other initiatives are good. I think what also probably going forward we'd like to see is there have now been a lot of good initiatives. So there's OASIS, this Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises. There's the Co-Investment Fund. There's a lot of stuff. There's Hello Hong Kong. What I think we need to go to, again, after the honeymoon phase is execution. So we need to make sure that going forward, it's not consumption vouchers every year.
Right.
And it's not an additional do X, Y, Z every year. I think this is where now the government, together with the chambers, together with industry, needs to make sure, okay, we're doing this, and we said we would do this, milestone 1, and we're doing this, we said milestone 3, and so on and so forth.
Right. Oh, that makes sense. And it sort of leads me to my next question of, obviously Hong Kong has had a lot of focus on its IPOs and it's trying to build towards an IPO hub. But what is that enough, and what else can be done, specifically examples can be done for Hong Kong to diversify and execute?
Okay. So I was at the Financial Secretary's luncheon today, which is hosted by the Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce, where he gives a speech on his budget. And one of the things he mentioned was that definitely, time and again, one of the key things Hong Kong needs to do is retain its role as an international finance center. That is vital, not just because it's important, but also because it's unique. And we all know that, but we keep in a way forgetting it. You can't compare Hong Kong Stock Exchange with that of Shanghai or Shenzhen. So the International Finance Center is going to be vital. IPOs are going to be important. What I think actually may be even more important is the role as a green finance hub.
Okay.
Because when you look at particularly Asia and Asia's transition role to carbon neutrality, to net zero, that's going to take a huge amount of investment, a massive amount of investment. Right. The Financial Secretary spoke, I think, about 66 trillion for all of Asia, and a good part of that will need to go into mainland China. Yeah. And that's the kind of money that you cannot raise as a government. You need to rely on public markets. And that's really where Hong Kong steps in, because Hong Kong, in that sense, of course, truly is unique. We have a great financial market already.
And they've emphasized a lot on green finance, Hong Kong, in the last year or two, right?
They've emphasized, but that is very much something that is completely at the start of the journey. Okay. So what they've done at the moment is they've issued green bonds, which is great, and they've done that in various different formats, which is also, again, great. But that's essentially been the government issuing a green bond. Now, for that transition to truly take place, it'll require a lot of companies, private companies, to also engage and to raise money to fund their transition. And for that, it's going to be important that people understand, what am I actually investing in? So there's buzzwords like taxonomy, not the greatest word on planet. So taxonomy is the system where you judge whether a specific investment is green or not green. Obviously, that's super important. If you're an investor, you want to do good by investing in green. You want to make sure it's not greenwashing. You're not investing into something that claims to be green but isn't. And so in that regard, taxonomy, Hong Kong has a great role to play in making sure that investors across the world, when they're investing in mainland China, in Asian countries, know what they're getting.
Mr. Hack, I want to pause you right there while we take a quick break. Oh. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Johannes Hack. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Talk the Walk. I'm speaking with Johannes Hack, president of the German Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Hack, with the Silicon Valley Bank fallout, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And the Hong Kong Monetary Authority said that there are Hong Kong firms that have been exposed potentially. How do you see this playing out for Hong Kong in the near future?
Okay. Excellent question. And I wish I could say I knew. I can only essentially guess. Because what's surprising is that you can see with Silicon Valley Bank the role that sentiment continues to play in the financial markets. You always think financial markets are these super rational places where everybody basically judges on facts alone. And something like SVB proves that that's not really the case. Because what happened with that bank was that people suddenly started drawing out their deposits when there wasn't really any clear reason to do so. And basically, you're perpetuating the problem by becoming part of it. I don't think that's going to happen in Hong Kong. I have extreme trust in the HKMA. It's an extremely good regulator. And it's also now, of course, got the advantage of having seen what can happen. So it's going to be much more ready in case anything should go wrong. I think the short-term effects are going to be probably sort of more turmoil in the financial markets for a couple of weeks, again, because people are not rational and because they tend to all run in one direction. Medium term, I think what's probably going to impact Hong Kong more, is going to impact the world more, is how we all transition from quantitative easing from a period of ultra-loose monetary policy where risk wasn't really priced. It wasn't priced properly, right, to a period which is more normal, where, again, risk has a price. And as we move along that transition path, obviously some investors, presumably somewhere, are actually going to lose some money. Sure. Because that's what pricing risk is all about. But at the end, financial markets will be in better shape than they are today.
Right. If Asian markets are more insulated long-term from the fallout of this, That makes Asia and Hong Kong more of a attractable destination than for a lot of German companies and German business then?
Again, Asia, very clearly from a European perspective, from a German perspective, continues to be a massive growth market. And I know from personal experience that a lot of people in Germany don't actually quite see it that way at the moment. They're at risk of becoming more insular. But a lot of German industry definitely knows that the growth markets are here. A lot of the stability is here. So a lot of future capex is going to be here. Right now, there's a lot of noise and issues. Some of them are actual issues around investing more in the region. So I think what we need to do, again, as Chamber, is make sure that people come here, see what the situation is like, take a slightly longer term view of this is today and this is going to be the next 3 years and what does that mean for my investment plans. And when they do that, it's clear that a world without Asian growth for Europe, so at least certainly for Germany, isn't really imaginable.
Right. What are specifically, if I may ask, some plans, upcoming plans from the GCC that you guys have for this year outlook?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first one actually concerns more celebration than business, perhaps. So we're in the lucky position, and I'm banging the drum here. We've got a triple anniversary coming up this year. So the Chamber is turning 40. The German Goethe Institute, the Foreign Language Institute and Culture Institute, is turning 60. And the Consulate General in Hong Kong, the German one, is turning 70. So we've got that triple anniversary. And around October, early October, when the Germans have their National Unity Day, we will be hosting a very big bash to bring together all the Germans. Because, again, for 3 years, we haven't really been able to see one another. So that'll be something to look forward to, where we actually have some fun. Other than that, we've had the first small delegations coming in. I was lucky enough to host a delegation from Germany a week ago that met with some senior Hong Kong finance people. I'm going to be part of a tour that goes to the GBA from this Sunday, where we're going to be seeing, we start off in Shenzhen, then we go to Zhuhai, Guangzhou, and Dongguan. And have a look at the GBA and physically experience the GBA.
Are you seeing more of that? The government is putting out more tours and trying to, especially from Hong Kong, whether it's the business community or students or what have you, to go to different cities around the Greater Bay Area and show it.
Exactly, which is, I mean, seeing is believing seeing is believing and being there and being able to engage on the ground there.
Break bread.
These are super important. If you're going to actually reconnect, you need to be able to look at someone, talk to them, and be in their place.
Especially after the last few years during the pandemic.
Nothing against video formats. I'm not going to mention any specific video format, but there comes a point when it's just no longer good enough.
Right. When it comes to green, we mentioned earlier green finance, but are there any other things in the pipeline which you guys are focusing on with regards to ESG or green finance?
Well, with green finance, luckily I'm also co-chair of the Sustainable Finance Working Group of the European Chamber in that case. And what we try to bring to Hong Kong is a European perspective on ESG. So we have a couple of ways we do that. I think one of the most important ones is that we mentor students. So we're made up of banks, fund managers, quite a number of them. Our members actually take on students to make them experience firsthand what it's like to work in an ESG-centered bank. And then we give our thoughts on certain important issues. The most important one goes around the issue of interoperability. It's a difficult word. Okay. So how can we make sure that European standards on what constitutes green and Chinese standards on what constitutes green, how can they be merged in Hong Kong? And how can we make sure that Hong Kong is that pivot from which you can actually transform both these taxonomies?
Would you say that from your perspective, do you think that German companies and European companies as a whole have a reinvigorated desire and understanding of the Greater Bay Area? You mentioned it's still in the early stages and it had been closed off a long time, but is there still that lure of it, especially to come through Hong Kong for that?
Well, at the moment, again, the ones who are here, I think understand it fairly well. The ones who are in Germany, it's a bit honestly like Belt and Road. I mean, mention
Right.
Belt and Road to a German in Germany,
They don't know beyond.
half of the
They don't know the
time,
beyond the surface level, if that at all.
if that at all.
But yeah,
And it's kind of similar with GBA. So GBA, because up to now, and we all know that too, up to now GBA really just has been 3 letters. It's there hasn't been actual any it to it. Now that's only just now starting, because now we're actually getting there, we're going there, we're seeing what can be done. I think all the industries I talk to, all the people from companies I talk to, they're super bullish on this idea that from Hong Kong, you'll be able to seamlessly go to mainland China, to seamlessly work together with your companies in mainland China. Germany is the biggest investor, has been the biggest investor in mainland China for the last 4 years. We have massive investments in mainland China, but for 3 years, we haven't really been able to interact with people there. So if we can use Hong Kong as that hub from which we can actually go in, that's going to be extremely important. On a practical level, I also have to say I've been to Guangzhou 2 weeks ago, first time in 3 years. I think there's certain practical things like how do I operate the ticket machine for the high-speed rail? How can I pay if I'm from Hong Kong? Can I use my credit card? Can I pay cash? These are really basic things that we actually need to work on for that whole thing to become a more seamless experience, because right now you're going from Hong Kong, which is super easy, into any of the GBA cities as a non-Chinese citizen. It's a lot more difficult.
right. And if you personally had any new focus that you'd like to see the Hong Kong government do with regards to its reopening up and its refocus on fiscal policy, what would it be? Something that perhaps they've not emphasized or stressed overtly or too much? Is anything that you would like to see more of the Hong Kong government try to focus on?
I think what's important is that the Hong Kong government, again, executes what it has said it will do. It's got good plans, but there's a lot of plans. If you look at the policy address, if you look at all the things it addresses, it's understandable. In some parts, they're trying out stuff, and which is fine. I mean, they need to find, next to the finance center role, they need to find something else. So there's a certain amount of experimentation in that. But that being said, you need to come to a point where you say, okay, now this is going to be my focus, so there's clarity. I'm going to be finance center, and I'm going to be center for X. Can be biotech, can be fintech, could be something. But I think what we'll be needing to see is that second stage where it's really about execution, the long plodding, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, to actually achieve what you set out to achieve.
Johannes, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you.
That's all for this time, and I'll see you at the same time next week. Goodbye.